Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. Welcome to the Muslim Philanthropy podcast at American Muslim Community Foundation. Today I'm honored to have on Aaron Dorfman, who is the President and CEO of the National Committee for Responsive Philanthropy. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. I like to just welcome everyone and ask them to share a little bit more about their family, their background, where they went to school, and kind of their journey to their current role. So feel free to share as much or as little as you'd like.
Cool. Um, so I grew up in Minnesota, in Minnetonka, this one of the western suburbs of Minneapolis. Um, my father was a public school teacher, and he was also president of the local teachers union chapter. So one of my early memories is, making picket signs in our garage when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and the teachers were preparing to go out on strike. My mother was one of the first women ordained in the Presbyterian Church, and she served for a dozen years or so as the chaplain at the women's prison in Shakopee, Minnesota. And so I remember, going with her to the prison sometimes, getting to know some of the women who were incarcerated there, and realizing at a very early age how our criminal justice system just completely fails women, and especially women of color. Many of the women were incarcerated for murdering abusive husbands or boyfriends, and our society completely failed to protect them and offer any ways for them to feel like they could escape their, abusers. And so how do we deal with it? Anyway, just a horrible, horrible system. So, obviously I had a very social justice oriented family, and even going back another generation from there, my grandparents were all immigrants to the United States. On my father's side, German and Russian Jews, and fleeing the anti-Jewish violence in that region in the early 1900s, they came to the United States. My grandfather worked his way, through school, through law school, and eventually became one of the attorneys at what was the precursor to the National Labor Relations Board. And he actually helped draft the Wagner Act, which is the seminal piece of legislation giving organized labor the right
Wow.
to bargain collectively. So he was one of the attorneys that worked on drafting that. Um, I had this family history and commitment to social justice. My dad's side of the family is Jewish. My mom's side is Christian. They raised me Christian. So we grew up attending a Presbyterian church. And when I was 10 or so, our church was part of the sanctuary movement, the original sanctuary movement. And we took in a man from El Salvador who was fleeing the violence there. They were trying to make him be part of the death squads, and basically said, kill your countrymen with us, or we're going to kill you and your entire family. And the U.S. government was not at that time offering asylum to anyone fleeing that violence, but a network of faith congregations said, we're going to take people in, and we're going to dare the U.S. government to violate the sanctuary of our churches if they want to get this person and deport them. So our church took in a guy named Rene Hurtado, or that's the name he adopted. And I remember I was like 10 years old at the time. Different families signed up to spend time with him every night. So we had like one night a week, we'd go and we'd cook dinner and hang out with him at the church. And, that experience was really formative to me. It said, if your faith really means anything to you, you've got to be willing to take risks and stand up for what's right. And then, excuse me.
It's okay. It's a good coffee drink break.
Yeah. So when I was 17, my dad died of cancer. He'd been fighting it since I was about 4, on and off, in and out of remission for a number of years. And that really made me think about, the fragility of life, and, we never know how many years we're going to get. He was
Right.
46 at the time. And it made me say, what do I want my life to be about? And that really set me on a course to devoting my life to working for social justice. I went to Carleton College in Minnesota, did my undergrad work there in political science, and a guy named Paul Wellstone became my mentor. And people who know that name would know him as the progressive, populist, liberal senator
Mm-hmm.
from Minnesota from 1990 to 2002. But before he was a senator, he was a college professor. So I had
Wow.
all my early poli-sci classes from him. Things like race, power, and inequality in America, grassroots social protest movements. He used to bring organizers into the classroom all the time,
Really
like
cool.
Julian Bond came and spoke to our class. So it was pretty amazing. Yeah. And after I graduated Carleton, Wellstone encouraged me to become a community organizer, which I did for 15 years. I spent 5 years with Acorn, and then 10 years with the DART Network, which is one of the faith-based organizing networks. People may be more familiar with Faith in Action or the Industrial Areas Foundation. Those are two of the other faith-based organizing networks. But I ran DART's affiliate in Miami and coordinated the statewide campaigns in Florida for our 10 affiliates there. Um, and along the way, during those 15 years, I got frustrated that it was so
Right.
hard to raise money for that kind of grassroots social
Mm-hmm.
justice community organizing work. Most of the groups were having a big impact, but they were doing it on a shoestring budget with 2 or 3
Always.
staff members,
Yeah.
all being unpaid. Yep. And, probably because of my privilege as a straight white cisgender man, um, I was much more comfortable dealing with philanthropy than were some of my fellow organizers. So I would go to the funder conferences, I would talk about the work, etc. And so then I said, well, I want to do an advanced degree in something. I don't want to leave organizing, but I'd been out of undergrad for like 10 years. And I found the program at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy at Indiana University. And
Wonderful.
I did the Master's in Philanthropic Studies program there. This was around,
Really cool.
I think I started in 99, ended in 2002, something like that. And I did it just because I thought it would help me understand philanthropy better and raise more money for the work I was so passionate about. But then in 2006, my predecessor at NCRP stepped down, and the recruiter called me up, and that led to a series of conversations that led to me leaving Miami, moving to DC, and taking over at NCRP in early 2007. So
That's
that's
really
how I
cool.
got here.
Nice.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that, and it gives a really broad, in-depth overview of really your mission as a person and why you do what you do. So I think that's really beautiful. And about the Lilly Family School, I'm also taking some courses there to get a graduate certificate in philanthropic studies. I'm also on faculty at the fundraising school teaching some of their courses. So it's a great program and can really see the benefit that you received. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, now you start at NCRP. What was your first role there, and kind of what have you been doing since?
So I took over in early 2007. The organization had just reached its 30-year mark in its history. And we decided it was a real opportunity to sort of re-examine what we were trying to accomplish and how we were going about it. So we did a very robust but very quick strategic planning process to get some clarity around our goals and the strategies we were going to use to pursue them. Um, and as part of that, I did had conversations with like 75 external stakeholders, and people valued a lot about NCRP's first 30 years, and I wanted to make sure we kept all of those things. And there were some things that were missing as well, and we figured out, how to add those. So one of the things that I really focused on was the organization had pursued a lot of really important things over its 30-year history, but hadn't really stuck with any of them long enough to drive the change we wanted to see in the sector.
Sure.
So, we decided to really make two things the top priority of the organization. And one was getting more philanthropic dollars for the explicit intended benefit of underserved and marginalized communities. And especially, this is the second thing, more funding for advocacy, community organizing, systems change that can create long-term change and benefits for those same marginalized constituencies. And that really became the number one goal of the organization, and we've been focusing our programmatic agenda around that. There are lots of other things that we care about too, and we do some work on, but the majority of our programs are designed to make those two things happen.
Great. And at NCRP, it's a membership-based organization as well. So, American Muslim Community Foundation was glad to join last year, and we're looking forward to that continued partnership and relationship with NCRP. So for those that are unfamiliar with NCRP, can you go a little bit more into sharing that membership model and kind of what you expect of your members and services that you provide?
Sure, absolutely. So we have both a nonprofit membership program, and grant makers also can join as members. So on the grant maker side, funders who share this vision for a more just and fair society and how philanthropy can contribute to building that kind of society, those funders join. They get some value from just being part of the NCRP community, and but most importantly, they join because they want to support having an independent, critical friend and watchdog for the philanthropic sector to push and challenge philanthropy to do better, and to hold up a mirror and let philanthropy know, when it's falling short and how it can do better. So one of our jokes is that we've been biting the hand that feeds us for more than 40 years, because we are, one of the few, I think it's growing numbers in recent years, but relatively few willing to really criticize philanthropy and how it's practiced. So, and we have about 150 foundations that support us financially with a membership or grant support or both. And then on the nonprofit member side, nonprofits join again because they share this vision. I think they join because they want to understand philanthropy better, and we can be a good translator and help them see current trends and new opportunities for securing funding for their social justice work. And they know that we're going to be an advocate to philanthropy for the things that they care about. So a big project of ours for the last few years has been something called the Movement Investment Project. And we're encouraging philanthropy to do more to support movements. Well, and a big focus within that has been on the pro-immigrant, pro-refugee movement. So a lot of nonprofits that are in that pro-immigrant, pro-refugee space are also members of ours, because they know, hey, NCRP is advocating for the things that matter to us to philanthropy, and that's really helpful, and we want to be part of that. We also have regular, what we call member huddles for our nonprofit members to just, get on the webinar, and we share what we're learning, and folks can ask questions and, build community and develop a shared strategy around things that they're working on. So we've really been building out that nonprofit membership program the last few years under the leadership of Janae Richmond on our team. And I think nonprofits are getting a lot of value for their memberships. And dues for both nonprofits and grant makers are on a sliding scale based on your size. So.
Right. In terms of just looking at the landscape of philanthropy and kind of where government services fall short, and the responsibility of government or philanthropy to kind of pitch in and make a difference, I would argue that a lot of families across the United States who feel philanthropically inclined, they understand that they have, power and agency with their charitable giving. But how can we really influence and provide more trust-based philanthropy to inform either politics or healthcare or social justice or any other movement that has been critical in these last few years?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're big supporters of the trust-based philanthropy movement. And I would say, there's three things that grant makers need to focus on if they want to be effective in advancing equity and justice. The first is building power. How are they helping communities that have been marginalized or oppressed to build their power? Because, the injustices that folks face are not because people aren't enlightened, it's because folks don't have enough power. And so if you fund the kind of work that helps communities of color, Black communities, Indigenous communities, Latinx communities, uh, uh, queer communities, women and girls, if you help those communities build power, they can negotiate in the public arena on their own behalf and get better outcomes. And so you help them build power by, funding organizing groups, legal advocacy, um, think tanks, all sorts of things that contribute to that. The
Right.
second thing that will help funders be effective is so building power is first, sharing power is the second thing that we encourage. And that really relates a lot to the trust-based philanthropy principles as well. So, in the past, and still to a great extent today, many funders think of their grantees as contractors who carry out the work that the foundation wants done, and they're looking to hire someone to do a thing that they want done. That doesn't unleash the creative potential of these groups, and so sharing power is a much more effective way to strengthen the groups and to achieve better outcomes in the world. And you do that by providing multi-year general operating support is one key practice. Um, you know, uh, constantly asking groups to reapply for funding year in, year out. It doesn't allow them to plan long-term campaigns for the future, and most real change
Sure.
can't be accomplished in a one-year cycle. So the multi-year funding is important, and general operating support gives groups the flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances. And I think if the last couple of years have taught us anything, is that, stuff changes really rapidly in the world. And general support provides groups with the ability to make the adjustments that they need to make without constantly going back to the funder for approval for that. Another way of sharing power that many grant makers are getting value in is at the governance level. And adding, if you're a family foundation, adding enroll non-family members to your board. And even great social justice funders like the Hill Snowden Foundation, who we gave an NCRP impact award to a number of years ago. It's a family foundation based in DC, funds a lot of organizing. They're fantastic, but even until just last year, it was only family members on the board. And then they finally did it, and they added 3 people of color, non-family members to the board with full decision-making power. And I think it's going to be a great step for them. I think they're going to get a lot of value from that. They're really excited about it as well. And certainly the foundations that have done that for a long period of time can tell stories about how their foundation is better because they've got other perspectives on the board. So sharing power at the governance level is important too. And the third practice to help funders be effective is wielding power. So, foundations as institutions and the trustees individually have a lot of reputational capital. They have a lot of relationships that they can bring to bear, and they've got to use that. They've got to use that power that they have to advocate for the communities and causes that they most care about. Neutrality is a myth. It doesn't help people. I love that Desmond Tutu quote, which I'm going to butcher now, but if an elephant is standing on the tail of a mouse, the mouse doesn't really appreciate it if you say that you're neutral. Funders need to, pick sides and use their capital beyond the grant dollars to take stands on these issues as well. So building power, sharing power, and wielding power. And all of that is, people want more information on that. That's our Power Moves initiative. You can find it on the initiatives tab on our website, free for download.
Perfect, which is ncrp.org.
Yeah.
Awesome. This has really been informative in terms of like how funders can help shift the culture of philanthropy. And, your community organizing background seems to be like a perfect marriage of seeing the needs and hearing the needs of the community and then actually doing something about it. So in terms of, you shared the Hill Snowden Foundation and a few others, I think those are really good takeaway points that grant makers can implement at their organizations to make sure that they are redistributing that power to marginalized and vulnerable communities as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
I wanted to ask, do you sit on any boards of nonprofits or involved in other ways in the community?
I'm on 3 boards at the moment. I've been vice chair of the board of the Center for Popular Democracy for over a decade. And the Center for Popular Democracy is a community organizing network. They have more than 50 affiliates around the country, most state-based, but some city-based. Groups like the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, or Make the Road New York, or the New Georgia Project that just played such a key role in the Georgia elections. They're one of our affiliates at CPD. So vice chair of that board. Also vice chair of the board of Capital in Maine, which is an investigative news organization. Based in Los Angeles, does work both in California and nationally. And I just think, independent, investigative, hard-hitting journalism is so essential for our democracy. So I'm happy to serve on that board, been on that for 2 or 3 years now. And I just recently joined the board of Repower, which is, that's Power. Formerly, that organization was known as Wellstone Action. It's the organization that came after the death of Senator Wellstone in a plane crash in 2002 to sort of carry on his legacy. And they rebranded as Repower a couple of years ago and really focus on training candidates and digital organizers and campaign managers, sort of this intersection of movements and electoral politics. I think that's really important. We need strong movements, and we need to get people who really share these values elected to office, and Repower does trainings that help with both of those. So happy to be on that.
That's really great. And, a lot of people, they understand the value of politics, of publications, of building power, but they necessarily don't see the intricality, if that's even a word, of philanthropy and all of that. So I think it's really interesting how, you serve on these boards in different areas and in your day job are involved in pushing philanthropy to be more responsive to these issues. And I think each of them are equally critical. So thank you for your leadership in the community in each of those areas.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for that.
Yeah.
Those kind words. And thanks for
Of
what you
course,
do. It's really important stuff.
American Muslim Community Foundation, we're happy to represent Muslim philanthropy. And one of the things that we want to showcase is that Muslims care about all of these issues as well. Funding is not going to just Muslim-led institutions. We've given millions of dollars out the door since 2017 to support each of these valuable areas in journalism or media or politics, and doing so through the generosity of the families that we work with. So majority of the families have donor advised funds. Every now and again, we'll do different campaigns like a Black History Month initiative or Women's History Month initiative to highlight grassroots organizations on the ground, and also Hispanic Heritage Month, and just continuing to do these types of initiatives to raise the voices of nonprofit organizations within marginalized communities who are doing fantastic work.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'd love to ask you about, your favorite nonprofits. I'm sure, the ones that you sit on the board are high on your list. But if there are other nonprofit organizations that you personally support, that you want to talk about as well and why you support them.
Oh gosh, now I'm going to get in trouble for whoever I leave out.
Which is why people should have a donor advised fund, because then your philanthropic advisor could just give you a whole list.
There we go. There we go. Um, so let's see. I really like the work of Fair Vote, which is pushing things like ranked choice voting, and sort of changing how we do elections, as well as protecting the vote. I think that's really critical to advancing the kinds of things that we care about. So I like them and we support them. My wife and I, not NCRP. Asian Americans Advancing Justice does really good work, and I've definitely supported their work before. Faith in Action, big fan of their work as well. I think it's a mistake if we cede faith to the right
Sure.
in this country. And so I think where there are faith congregations doing work that advances fairness and justice, I'm a big supporter of that.
And to that point, we're hoping to launch the Interfaith Giving Circle Confronting Hate. So trying to find these like-minded people who want to, from their faith perspective, give to help alleviate the issues of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, just hate in general, to provide a more equitable and just world. So we're looking to find those community organizers across the country to start that giving circle and initiative in 2021.
Yeah, awesome. I'm also a big fan of People's Action. That's another one of the national community organizing works. They did some really impressive work this cycle with deep canvassing, where they're having sort of real in-depth conversations with potential swing voters. And the data really looks like they had a big impact in this election cycle with that tactic. So, yeah, lots of others, but I hate to leave anyone out. So
no worries. I appreciate you sharing the ones that you did, and I would love to just be able to let people know. Obviously, they can follow NCRP online, and they can learn more about the National Committee for Responsive Philanthropy, sign up for their newsletter, and just be informed about these trends and challenges in philanthropy so that you can make more informed decisions about your charitable giving and how you choose to select the organizations that you do to make a long-term impact. Aaron, any other things that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I just think these are incredible times we've been living through, and I just encourage every donor family to really like dig deep, have courage, do the things that maybe scare you a little bit, because the world needs it. We need you to, step up and lead and share power and help transform our society for the better. Thank donors for what they've been doing and encourage and challenge them to take risks and go deeper.
Definitely. Thank you, Aaron, for your time and leadership at NCRP.
With you.
Likewise. Bye bye.
All right. Bye.